Hi, it's Rachel with Stirring the Deep. So I was talking about how this whole sequence, right, which is, I know I'm doing a lot of videos on this, but it is so important because we're just seeing deeper and deeper about what it means to seek after God's heart, what it means to be united to Him, what it means to be married to Him. It's about this character, about how can we be perfect creations, although we're not all knowing. We're finite in our understanding. It's as God purifies your character, that purifies your desires, now you can walk in your desires, do what you want to do, which brings great satisfaction and fulfillment and complete sincerity without any hypocrisy. And it's the way that God guides you. I mean, that's the way He wants you to go because He's now governing your desires. Your desires are coming out of that pure place. It's a very powerful, tremendous walk that you go through, and it's one of complete rest and enjoyment. It's being having a childlike spirit because you're in rest, because He's flowing through you and creating your reality. You're like an observer watching the beauty that He creates because you're letting that divine character create your reality. Everything comes from that. That's why you have to go in. It's an internal work. That's why He comes from within. And this is also why He comes as a thief to some. Because if you have been hungering and thirsting for righteousness, remember that really is saying you want to be a part of His character because you always want every act to reflect Him. Okay? And that's how it's done in this place. But if people haven't been attuning to the state of their soul, they've just been looking outwardly and this kind of a thing, they miss it because they're not really hungering and thirsting for righteousness, because that's where He's coming to fill you. That's where the seed starts to grow. It's within you. Okay? Now, I've talked about how important it is to have in this chain reaction from the first being the character to the end being the light that you are putting out, that this whole thing has to be done in all sincerity with no hypocrisy in it. And you can see how that can be, because you can have a desire that you're ashamed of, so you don't act on that, so you do what you think would be loving or good or nice because you want to appear loving or good or nice, not just to someone else but to yourself. You don't want to be that mean person or that thoughtless person or whatever it is. So you do the things that you think are right and good and loving. But the problem is you see you're starting to create disharmony within that reaction, with that chain reaction. Because if that's what you desire, you've got to go back and you've got to get real. You've got to be willing to face where you are in the very depths, at your very core, that everything else is built upon, and that is your character. And most people, that's what their reality is. They have this duality going on within them. And there are some people whose character is totally corrupt and they don't care. So nowhere along the path actually is there any hypocrisy, because they're happy to do whatever they have to do to get the desire they want. They don't care who they step on, how they treat people, what they do. And so they get their desires in a sense, but it's full of such wickedness and corruption. Okay? And there's power. So even though their desires are corrupt, there's power in the sense that they don't have the hypocrisy there. They're wicked and they're corrupt, and that's what they're known for, but you know what? That has caused them to succeed. I know I trample on people, I cut corners, or I cheat, but that's allowed me to succeed and get where I want to get. Because that power of the desire is what created that. And those are some people that have gained a lot of power in this world because that's the state of their soul. But most people, I don't know what percentage, but most people, it's more of a battling. You have this mixture of desires that you really want to be a better person, but you're not quite there. It's like this whole kind of thing that's happening, but yet you start abiding in so much hypocrisy that you think you are nice. So there's a lot of lies that are very bonding there. But most people have this duality, and that's what it is to be lukewarm. In Revelation chapter 3, starting in verse 15, it says, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could wish you were cold or hot. The cold or hot is that exactly. You're either that in that wickedness, and that's where you're at, and that's what other people know, and you don't care, right? Or if you're hot, that means you are seeking that divine character, and you're purging all hypocrisy out. There's none of that that's in there, and you are growing. So in both aspects, you can see major growth. Good wickedness growing, or extreme, like just spiritual maturity, light that's growing. Again, it's the harmonious relationships with yourself, with God, with other people. This love that's increasing in your life, that's full of all sincerity, that's very real. So you can see that. Where you don't see a lot of growth in someone or in your life, it's more like kind of this circular, never really going anywhere. Maybe you have kind of some little changes, but it's, over the years, it hasn't been a lot of change. It's kind of the same. As I say, most people, they don't change because most people are lukewarm along that whole chain reaction. Verse 16, so then, because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I am rich, have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, that's the hypocrisy. That's the convincing of yourself. You have these off desires and thoughts and whatever, but you're just but you've convinced yourself by the whitewashed walls, by the appearances, by the masks that you've created, by kind of this illusionary reality that people see, but isn't really consistent with your heart and where you're at. But you've convinced yourself, I'm not that bad of a person, I do this, I do that, check off the list, that type of thing. And do not know that you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. You're naked because you are not wearing the new garments of a new divine character. You have all this corruption that's hidden within you. But yet on the outside you're presenting something that's not so bad. That's the hypocrisy. Okay? And you do that with yourself, with your life. That's how you treat other people. And this is what he says, I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire. Remember that fire is that process of going through the godly sorrow, repenting, seeing where you're causing harm and turning from that, having your desires purified, that you may be rich in white garments, that you may be clothed. That's that new character. That's that divine character. The righteous acts, right? It's real. It's not something contrived. That the shame of your nakedness may not be revealed. And anoint your eyes with eye salve that you may see. That's seeing. Stop blinding yourself by your hypocrisy and convincing yourself and justifying things and blaming or whatever it is. Seek to really see no matter what you see. But see knowing that light is there. Look into the light. Because that will not, if you don't look into the light, you just think it's that bottomless pit. If you don't desire to walk toward that divine nature, then when you look in, you're just going to see a pit of darkness. Okay, so I'll read this last verse 19. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. That's that process. So listen. Therefore be zealous and repent. This is what most people live in. And I know I lived in this state unknowingly. I would always read this and think about, oh, it's those people. No, that's you. It's like that's where we've all been. Most of us have been there in that lukewarm stage, and we thought that's just how it is. That's what we kind of learned. That's just how it is. No, that is not how it is. So choose not to stay in this lukewarm status. Choose not to be content with, the thoughts and desires that seem wayward, but be renewed in your mind, be renewed in your spirit. And that means going to your character. Because once you know where to focus, once you know where to be attentive, God can instruct you and lead you and teach you through your life and your circumstances and all these things, and you start seeing this growth and you start bearing this beautiful fruit and you start moving into this abundant joy. You start moving out of that circle where you just can't seem to get past issues, you can't seem to get past things. You start moving out of that and you start growing forward. And you start transforming and you start becoming a light. That's how people become a light, because they're on that path of purification. And the moment that you start looking toward that light within you, that seed that wants to grow, that wants to expand, to fill all of you, the moment you start doing that, God takes everything of your past that was headed toward death, all the actions, all the corruption, and He turns it all around and He starts moving all of it for good. I can see how God has taken so many things of my past and He has used it for good. That's like what Joseph said with his brothers. He said, you intended it for evil, God used it for good. That's what God does for us. It is amazing. He renews everything. Everything works for the good of those who love Him. If you love Him, you obey Him. That means if you love Him, you desire to be a part of that divine nature. So you're moving away from the things that aren't a part of it. You're moving toward Him. And the moment you start moving toward Him, He starts taking everything in your life, every hurt, every pain, every failure, everything, and starts moving it for good. And let me tell you, that brings a tremendous peace into your life. But it also brings amazing wisdom, because you're learning from all those experiences. And He brings them up at the right time. You trust Him to do that. You trust Him. He's the one working in you. You're His workmanship. So this is all God's work in you. We're the attentive disciple, learning, watching, observing, saying, and it's really just about that easy. It's like when you're watching inside and you see this light and it reveals this part of your character, and you see the contrary and you want that, you want His, He gives you the understanding and the knowledge, and you move there. It's not difficult. To change us into a new creation, wow, that's impossible. But when God breaks it down and moves it in His power and His grace, and He's the one that's teaching you, He makes it, you go through trials because you're battling against yourself, but the actual process that we really engage in, that's what it's about. It's just about seeking that understanding and that knowledge and desiring it. Because when we really desire it and we're seeking it and we're listening, then He knits it into our spirit, He knits it into our soul. And that's how you move out of that lukewarm state that just blinds you. And the other thing about that lukewarm state, it blinds not only you to the reality of your life, because you've gotten so used to the hypocrisy, you don't even know it's hypocrisy. I didn't. I never thought about it like that. But that's what it was. And it really blinds you to God, because you never really see God's power manifesting in your life, nor does anyone else see it, because there's no growth. And there's no growth because you have all these competing desires. You have some good desires, some bad desires, and nothing really happens. You have a little growth here, but everything kind of cancels itself out. And so especially because a lot of these people in this lukewarm state are the ones that are professing to be of God, but there's no power in their life. There's no growth in their life. And that's why. Because they're not realizing that dynamic. They need to be on hot to burn with that zealousness for just obtaining that divine character. But it not just be some emotion, but a true, in your life, you are making it time, making it a priority to be still, to hear, to quiet yourself, to listen to what's happening within you. What's happening within you, and where does God want to take you? Because that's where it's all happening within your soul, and that's what starts creating your reality. Till next time, keep stirring the deep. It's the one thing that changes everything else.